You know, I could sound like a Yugi boomer for saying this, but I remember a time when Yu-Gi-Oh's artwork was, I don't know, for the lack of better words, it was grungy and sophisticated. Yu-Gi-Oh's art when I was growing up challenged a lot of Western norms, so much that the card game was almost banned in the States. The art encapsulated what can be considered as gothic tones, religious ceremonies, and even ancient lore from other cultures of the past. Now, it's not to say that the older Yu-Gi-Oh didn't have its fair share of fan service. In fact, it very much did. And it's also not to say that modern Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have gothic tones, religious ceremonies, and even ancient lore from other cultures. That's still true. But the biggest issue that I'm having with Yu-Gi-Oh is the shift on consistency on how these themes are coming out. In fact, I can go as far as to say that Yu-Gi-Oh is having a modern day revolution that I am not a fan of. Instead of the concepts that we've grown to know and love, it's almost feel like it's been dominated by fan service Yu-Gi-Oh decks. And not only does this dissuade the target audience that Konami has been trying to reach in the TCG, which is the children, it also invites a demographic of players not welcome to society, which hurts the overall culture. In case you guys didn't know who I am, hi, I'm TheCaliEffect, and I've been playing this game for 23 years. God damn! I played it since its very humble beginnings with starter deck Yugi and Kaiba all the way till now. And while it isn't a huge problem for the masses right now, I think that Yu-Gi-Oh's artwork is starting to become very concerning. Let's go ahead and jump on in. Now, when it comes to art and controversy, Yu-Gi-Oh is no stranger whatsoever. In fact, when Yu-Gi-Oh first made his debut, there were a couple of cards that had to be changed because of the art depiction and some of the card names.
So if you know anybody that plays Yu-Gi-Oh and they believe in God at the same time, tell them about this. I mean, this is like a witchcraft game. This is a game to play spells on kids. It really is.
Some of my favorite cards that had to be immediately changed was a card named Trial of Hell. With the sword sticking through the coffin with blood protruding from both sides and the name Hell in it, this was a complete no-go for America at the time. Monster Reborn had its artwork completely changed. The original card is a depiction of an Ankh, and now it's switched to a relic that has no real resemblance of said card. And just to be 100% fair here, while there are other cards that are more towards lore and religion, there were still a fair share of cards that had to be censored for the fan service. And this may double down that Cali is a boomer, but when I was growing up, the only way to get actual confirmation that these cards were what they were was to have the original OCG versions. The internet was not as a reliable source. In fact, most of us didn't even have it. Talk about the dark ages.
Whether you believe in spells and curses or not, they are very real. I've lived them. I've been under such demonic attack and oppression that most people would send me to think I belonged in a mental hospital.
And now you're probably wondering, why exactly were these cards even printed in the first place? Some of them seem really dark and grudgy, fathering certain ceremonies that weren't really popular to talk about in America, while others were completely nudity. For a children's card game, this was a complete no-go. But I think in order to actually understand, you probably have to dive into Japanese culture a little bit more. You see, one thing about Japanese culture is that they were very more open when it comes to religious practices and nudity. In fact, I can go as far to say is that if you or your parents were probably offended by those pictures, then you're probably American, because most of the world has different aspects and different ways to view things. While nudity in America is often sexualized, in other cultures, that's not necessarily a thing. And the interesting thing about it is that it can be vice versa. Like example, when I was growing up, guns weren't really that much of a huge problem. My uncles had a gun, my cousins had a gun, my grandma had a gun. Heck, I even touched guns when I was younger. And in other places in the world, that is not normal whatsoever. But I think the thing that makes culture so beautiful is that when we're in that area, we can experience that culture, show love and respect. Which is why personally, it has been very easy for me to turn a blind eye to some of the cards that have been printed in recent times. But if the target audience for the Western world is going to stay adolescent boys, I think there's going to be a huge problem. You see, like I said before, in different cultures, we view things differently. And one thing that I've noticed about in America as opposed to Japanese culture is when Yu-Gi-Oh cards are portrayed in a particular way, Americans think a lot different. I think when things started to go downhill is when Konami took the proverbial training wheels off of these cards. Instead of censoring anything that could be considered slightly perverted, and trust me, there's tons of cards that fit that criteria, they've actually allowed more and more cards to slip through the cracks, while some censorship has been really weird. I mean, adolescents in the West have found a way to turn Trap Trick Sarah and Sky Striker Ace Ray into all different types of things that I cannot say on YouTube. And with these cards being printed at more of a rapid rate than they once were before, it's starting to become a huge problem if you were trying to get adolescent players into the game, at least the correct way. And of course, in some cases, there's no helping this. Because if I know anything about Americans, they have a penchant for turning just about anything into Gooner's work. But what I'm saying is, instead of being more reserved and players using their imagination to turn anything into their work, Konami is leaving a lot less to imagine. This has essentially brought me to the next situation. The art invites some of the worst type of people. And for the people that haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh long enough, it's so bad that I don't even have to mention anything about the player, and most Yu-Gi-Oh players already have that person in their mind. Now, I want to make it incredibly clear that I do not fault Konami for this particular situation. Culturally, on their side, it is 100% accepted for them to make these type of cards. But unfortunately, the type of players that these cards produce in the Americas are completely terrible. Yu-Gi-Oh players that make and buy custom provocative accessories to be able to use for their cards. Oftentimes, they're distorting images in a negative way, so negative that a child probably shouldn't be present in that room, or the person should be arrested. Usually, this particular player doesn't have the best hygiene or sense of self, and a lot of times they're so zoned out they don't even understand they're doing something very inappropriate, especially when this game is still marketed towards kids in America. And like I said before, I think that these players will always be prevalent. I've noticed an uptick in these particular players strictly because of the new way that Konami has been putting out art. The way that Konami has been recently putting out art is really reminiscent of those gacha mobile games, the type of games with the half-naked women wearing some type of maid outfit of some sort, or maybe even a mecha suit, which there's been an uptick of that inside of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, those type of players with the low social skills. And if I'm being so incredibly honest with you, I think that that is one of the leading reasons why players stop playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I know personally there has been times where I've walked into the shop, seen those particular players, and immediately have lost all interest in playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In the TCG for that particular day. I've had women and parents approach me about this situation and also decide to not play Yu-Gi-Oh! At local shops because of this as well. And of course, that particular culture is in pretty much every single card game, but it seems to be more pronounced in Yu-Gi-Oh! Than any of the others, and I think it's mainly because of the art that's being presented in front of them, and it's really a shame because Yu-Gi-Oh! Does have some incredible art that follows some really good lore storylines. Correct me if I'm wrong down below in the comment section, but I think one of the best pieces of lore is the branded lore. In my opinion, it has the perfect mix of cards that follow an aesthetic that everybody can love. From the branded All-Bass cards to the Sword Soul, Tri-Brigade monsters, all of these card games bring a unique aesthetic and promote the card game in a healthy way. And while players do still inappropriately display cards like Incredible Ecclesia or Fallen Albas, the cards themselves don't necessarily go out of the way to make themselves presented in that way. And then we have strategies like Malice, which when I originally seen them, I genuinely thought they were fan art. Lacrima, the Crimson Tears, and even the new Dragon Tales cards, in my opinion, crosses a line. Not only are the themes on point with a cliche mobile game, it goes out of the way to clearly detail certain aspects and images that would promote that type of culture. And that brings me to my third and final point. I think if this continues on the way, it will actually hurt the game's long-term success. One thing that we have to be incredibly mindful with our culture is that some things that we do will not be accepted by all of the cultures. For example, my people season their chicken. Some people may be offended by that, if you know what I mean. I'm not saying lose sight of who you are, but if you want to be the biggest and the best, you're gonna have to appeal to as many people as possible. And one thing that you can do to appeal to a massive audience is not do something that will promote a type of culture that won't be conducive to you 5, 10, and 15 years in the future. Now, this video is the start of a new series, big dog. I'm gonna put this video out as a form of a particular question, and I really wanna know if I'm tripping or not. I think that it's really healthy to have these type of discussions, and more importantly, get feedback from you guys, because you guys are very, very important to me. And of course, big dog, as with any new series, if you want to see more videos like this, you already know what to do. Go ahead, like, comment, and share this video. And for the people that want to see it early and support the channel, I'm putting it on my Patreon as a special thank you for helping me pay my editors a lot early. But let me know, in your opinion, has Yu-Gi-Oh's art gone too far? Or does this old timer just need his medication, his tapioca, and bingo? Until then, big dog, go ahead and check out these videos so I can catch you on the next one.